My
do
bad,
I'll
my
do
B.
introductions.
All
Whoa,
right, my B, my B, my
whoa, whoa,
B.
wait. That was actually impromptu. I already turned open the mic and the desktop. But hey guys, welcome to Fireside Cast. We are doing a little something where we had an idea. Well, I had an idea. And no, it's not an interview with Trip Crap. I have to update the HTML regarding that. But we were thinking, how can we create some lore in the community? How can we get people to know just what kind of work people do behind the scenes? You know what I'm saying, Tcmano. You know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I have my good friend, my co-caster, my slime, Tcmano here. Tcmano, how are you today? I know I pulled you in suddenly, but you do have the time for it.
I do have the time, and so I'm happy to be a part of this test for the Reflections podcast. I think it will be interesting to, hear from some of the people you might not know as much about and what they do with the community. Some funny people in chat out there. Respect to everyone watching this, first time, and obviously huge shout outs to you, Jay. Even before you even begin, you do a lot of work for the community yourself, and I would really like to see someone get you on here and see you be interviewed because you do so much work for the whole scene. So excited to be here, I guess, is the short version of that. And yeah, I'm excited to see how this goes.
Yeah, graphics were obviously not my forte, so it does use the HUD that we did use last night, as you can see. But it's a test run. We're just gonna go with the flow, see how people receive it, and obviously, TC Mono, we have to start off with introductions. So really, what comes with any reflection podcast, like when you interview somebody about their career, is like, how did you get into TF2?
Oh, well, okay. I guess introducing myself. Name's TC Mano.
Total control, Mono.
Um, Yeah, some people might know me as TC Mango. I only did that because there was a player on my team named Grape, and essentially his name was a fruit, and realized I could easily change my name into being part fruit by just adding in a letter. So I did that. So some people call me Mono, some people call me Mango, whichever you prefer. I don't really mind. I guess getting into TF2, my introduction was the extremely old TF2 charity mix-up that they used to do all the way back. I don't know if you remember that, but it used to be people like Robin Walker. Um,
Old,
the
old Bob head admin. Yep.
Yes, yeah, he used to be in it. The Yogs cast, I think, other old gaming YouTubers like Day9, um, kind of people like that in like 2013, 2012, 2011 type era.
Right. Right.
Um, so I think that's when I first really started like registering that TF2 was there, and also, I mean, it was free. It was the only thing that could run on my laptop. So I think I was gonna be drawn to it either way.
Yeah, that's a pretty standard introduction. I always got to find it through like some kind of like community charity event that's popularized with like a lot of influential figures, like for example the New York's cast, as you mentioned. So not surprising to see that. It's like it isn't a superhero backstory where it's like you got bitten by some radioactive stuff and you suddenly got into this game, but you came in
No.
naturally. Good marketing efforts by whoever organized that event. But now you're in TF2. How old were you back then, and how long ago was that, though?
Well, I can quickly check my
You should check
Steam
that
account.
mercenary badge. The mercenary badge.
Yeah, I could check the mercenary badge. I'm gonna check my Steam account because I think I probably made my Steam account to play TF2. I don't think I would have played anything except like maybe that one. There's like a Spiral Knights game. I think I played it, but I think I only played it to get the badge, which I think a lot of people did.
That's
To
funny
be
because I think
fair,
Delta Market actually played that game. And like if you look at his Steam profile, he literally has the he literally has all the stuff related to that game. Like he has screenshots. You could display the screenshots of like what you were doing in that game, and it's kind of like a trip down memory lane. So
well, that's impressive because I don't know. I don't think I knew anyone who actually played it. I think a lot of people just played it to get the item. Maybe it was the
yeah, there was
Black
an
Rose
item there.
knife.
No, it's not the
Yeah,
Black Rose. It's not the Black Rose. It's something else.
yeah. thing is, I don't think I even played enough of it to get the item. You know what I mean? I don't know. At that time, I was 12. Actually, no, I was 11, not yet 12. So very, very young back then in 2012. Not a boomer in that respect. But yeah, I started playing in 2012, somewhere around there. I think my first kind of glance with competitive was I used to watch a lot of the X television cast. I'd watch those, and because like they stopped covering sixes because of a whole ESEA Bitcoin mining scandal, I ended up just watching tons and tons of Highlander, and I'd get on with my friend, my IRL friend, in high school and in middle school, and we would just go to TF2 Center together, and we just play like Pyro and NG, and we'd stink up the lobbies. We were terrible, man. We were absolutely terrible. But at that point, we didn't really matter. We were just trying to be like Star and Jerma, even though Star's not necessarily known for his Pyro, but just kind of a similar dynamic, just playing in these like TF2 Center lobbies with each other and just investing ungodly amounts on ridiculous cosmetics.
Humble beginnings, humble beginnings. We have to ask the main question then, because you kind of streamlined that you were getting into competitive TF2 at that time, where you screwed around in, like, I guess what you were just saying is an internet cafe. What was the first class that you made, and did you start off in Highlander or sixes? Maybe it could have been
Well,
Prolander if you started off that late.
no, 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 no. I don't think. Oh, actually, no. I was on the Pro Lander team, but that tanked. No. First class was definitely. I think it was Scout. I think, or it might have been Medic. I don't know. Even though I kind of knew and I had a really good idea of what competitive sixes was, and I watched it. I watched I-52, I-55. All live I-58 as well. I didn't start playing competitive TF2 until the summer of COVID, just because I didn't have enough time to
Hey,
really
let's go back
invest.
to 2015, dude.
Yeah, well, yeah,
That's a
I started,
huge gap.
well, yeah, because I started playing TF2 Center lobbies around that time, but I think after 2017 I stopped and I just started playing just pubs and stuff. But the main thing I was doing then, which does actually involve a few people from the TF2 competitive scene and is an actual bit of lore, is that I was at that point in time, to set the scene, community servers were still a thing, and you could still like the quick play that TF2 has currently hadn't been shipped out yet, so community servers were still very active. You could get into one, see the same faces every day. It's not like now where you ever do Valve quick play or it's Uncle Dane. It's kind of new people every
True.
time, but back then it was kind of like the same people you'd play again and again with. And because I think it was actually a post on the TF2 Reddit, advertising their server that they just created was a server called the Train Yard server. And some notable alum from that server are Aaron.
Lechuga.
No,
Lechuga.
no, not Lechuga. I wish it was Lechuga and Omar and Grape. That would be extremely convenient, but it's not. It's actually Aaron, who went on to create PugChamp.
Oh, Aaron, the TFT.
She,
She made all the stuff for TFTV. Yeah, I know who you're
yes, yeah,
talking about.
yeah. Yeah, she was actually the lead person of the Train Yard group, the first person who made the first server, I believe. And then also there were people like Uberchain was a big part of that community as well. Those two people are probably the most notable, but they were all very just like really great players as well. And so I became like a moderator for the servers back then, helped out. And I guess the first thing I did with the TF2 community was there was a failed TF2 charity event all the way back when. I forget why it was failed. I think someone was either stealing money or something like that. But the replacement was TF2 Can. That was the replacement charity event for the charity event that failed. I think it only ran 1 year, maybe it ran two. But I kind of helped set up some of the servers, and I think I interviewed King Raja all the way back
Demo
when.
Night Main. Huh.
Yes, Demo Night Main. I helped out there. I think I helped set up like Pyro Dodgeball because it was Aaron doing it, it was Uber Chain doing it, and by
Oh,
extension,
I know who.
just a lot of the
I know the charity event. I think it's Charity TF, right?
maybe.
Rings a
I think
bell.
Yes. I think you're right. It is that. Um, it was that it had like a toucan for the logo. I forget what the failed event was in the first place was. Um, but yeah, helped out there, and that was really cool. And from that, I kind of got like a kind of like a yearning to do more kind of production stuff. I didn't get a chance to do that until the faded BTS 2020.
Oh, we don't talk
Um,
about that.
oh
Oh
no,
no,
we
we
don't
can
talk
talk
about
about it.
that.
We can keep talking because this is your lore. It's your lore. It's your
Yes,
story.
yeah. Um, I was supposed to do on-site production for that all the way back then. I think I was gonna help Dr. Happiness with the servers because BTS out in Cali, I'm out in Cali. Even though I hadn't done any actual competitive TF2 at that point myself, I'd still watched a lot of TF2, a lot of Six's TF2. Um, and so I kind of knew the teams. I knew how things went. So I just kind of wanted to help out because I'd been watching it for so long. So I kind of wanted to help out there. And then obviously everyone kind of knows what happened there. I remember talking to Eckstein and oh, what was his name? Loic at the time after the event got uh canceled and trying to figure out where else we could do it in California, in Los Angeles, and also talking to Mitch and other people as well to try and see how we could salvage it, but it just never came to fruition. And then from there, COVID happened because that was 2020, and then that's when I started my first team. But that's a lot of rambling to answer
Yeah.
that initial
Hold up.
question.
Hold up. You know, because we do touch on a very touchy topic of competitive TF2's history, which is Beyond the Summit TF2. For those who are not familiar with the situation, we actually do have Dr. Happiness in the chat. But if you look back on the VOD, you won't see what he says here. So I'll say it out loud for you guys. He didn't have too much to do with BTS TF2. But to go back, it was a event back in, I believe, it was organized late 2019. That's fall 2019. They did the
Yeah,
qualifiers. The online qualifiers were done for both
online
European
qualifiers
and
were
North America.
hype.
And there was supposed to be, if I remember correctly, there was supposed to be an Australian team that was supposed to go. I think the team name was
Yes,
Xiao Zhao, something like that. And it was supposed to have that Malaysian scout TJ. And that event was supposed to be scheduled somewhere around early mid January in the West
yes,
Coast. But there was some controversy there regarding one of the organizers, and that
yeah.
led to the departure. Do we want to touch a little bit on that topic, Tcmano, from your perspective, about how things kind of
Uh,
went down in a fury of flames, per se?
Sure. Yeah. So the whole hype of around BTS is, if you don't know what Beyond the Summit is, they're kind of like they would have been the most legitimate esports kind of thing that TF2 had done probably since Insomnia. Because Insomnia, obviously extremely legitimate. You know, they've got the whole gaming convention land that people just go there for, aside from just TF2 as well. You know, if they've got CS:GO, they had Valorant, I think there maybe
Right.
a couple times before. So extremely legitimate, incredibly like well known. Same thing for BTS. The BTS thing wouldn't be done by BTS though, which is kind of like the main thing. It was all done by TF2 people, and they were actually kind of hesitant to put their name on it. They specifically didn't want it to be like BTS's TF2. It was going to be like just sponsored by BTS. Like we'd be using their facilities, and there's also kind of like a lot of what secrecy around where the BTS
Right.
address was, because I didn't want that being just kind of like blasted everywhere, same way like Insomnia would be. But yeah, it was super hype because aside from that, there was also going to be an Australian team, Jasmine T, who had gone to I-55. I don't think it would have been the same roster,
55.
and then
55,
yeah, they went.
58, and rewind 1.
Yes, they were going to be making a return. And then also, you're right, there was for the first time an Asian team from Asia Fortress, I think with TJ as well. So you would have had teams from Europe, NA, Australia, and Asia, all coming together. There wasn't a South American team, unfortunately, I think, in the cards. But otherwise, you would have had basically teams from all major TF2 scenes otherwise. So it was really exciting for that aspect. And then, a couple things went wrong. There was the whole alpha situation, which is not the alpha situation that we have today. It
Oh
was just different.
man.
It was completely different. Basically, the way they were trying to schedule the teams and like get the teams in was
Oh
obviously they were
man.
giving priority to North American teams because it's a North American event.
Correct.
But the thing is, Alpha's team got skipped over, and the invite went to a European team much later in the planning process, which kind of screwed over Alpha's team because they were kind of expecting they would get the next dibs because they are a North American team, and presumably it would be much easier for them to go to a North American land than it would be for a European team to go to a North American land. So that was one thing that happened. A second thing, which led to oh God, what's his name? And Master, not
The
Master
Supreme
Comms,
TSC.
Supreme, yeah, TSC,
TSC.
the Supreme Commander. That led to him stepping down, which was already a big blow because he was doing a lot of work behind the scenes. And then also,
Sammy Face Dashner.
yes, yeah, I'm not going to touch on the Dashner thing, but the Sammy Face thing, after those two people ended up leaving, Sammy Face just kind of called it quits, just kind of canceled the event without letting anyone know, which
I
was.
think if I remember, because I think there was the controversy regarding Sammy was, you know, I don't think it was the alpha situation that happened after, because TSC stepped down after how they handled. Um, we probably shouldn't get too much into this and involve our personal opinions regarding it, but it was regarding the controversy that happened to Alpha that you aforementioned, and basically, I guess they did some internal review, and they were like, "Yeah, we'll reinstate Alpha in," but that's what causes TSC to step down. And I have actually the forum posts regarding the Alpha situation that were from Sammy Face's TFTV account. Um, that was a very very thin line for them to walk into it. I think regardless of what outcome had been reached or what decision had been made, that may have caused actually a there wouldn't have been any winners regardless. I think Mono, and yeah, basically they the controversy with Alpha that Tcmano mentions happens. I believe BTS had decided to remove Alpha or bar him from participating in the event, and then they do an internal review or something like that, as you can see in the post that Sammy Face makes here in post number 14 for this BTS TF2 Insanity thread. They review it, they reinstate Alpha. TSC then steps down the next day, and then after that, the whole entire event goes down in flames. So Mono, I mean, without interjecting any
Yeah.
personal opinion into the matter, it's kind of just like, well, this just we have all this controversy regarding a very popular community figure within the competitive scene, and then then a can of worms opens, which also brings down probably one of the best figures in the community in TSC, which then also exposes Sammy Face, or at least, I don't really have the source on the thread, but there were some documents or like some anonymous people speaking about how it was hard to work with Sammy Face, and then
Yeah.
the whole event just goes out
I
into fury of flames.
I can't really talk on that because my extent in this was just kind of being in the Discord server because most of my stuff would have been at the LAN. I would have been helping out, like, I think setting up servers and kind of like with the on-site production. So it's kind of like you said, I don't want to interject too many like personal things. And also like it's so long ago that, if you really want to take a look at it, you can look at these forum threads and you can make your own opinions about it just because, it's such kind of old drama that I don't know. I don't
I
know.
guess maybe
It's a weird time.
the best way to put it is in like, while you weren't directly involved in the decisions that were being made, it may have left a sour taste in your mouth about production TF2, or may have left you jaded about, you know, maybe production in TF2 is not all sunshine and rainbows. There are some snaky figures in the back lines, and maybe this would have been something you don't actually want to pursue any further, but you still continued. You still continued to march on, and you still are casting to this day. So really Tcmano, like like the whole controversy about BTS TF2 happens beyond the Summit TF2. You the event goes away, your chance at producing or like being involved in like one of the biggest TF2 international lands at that time goes away. Why did you still continue?
I didn't really get an opportunity to until I think it was amateur season. So it would have been season 5 of RGL. And my team minus rep was playing against Ayer's team. Ayer, who used to be the NA head of TFTV, and he also used to be invite admin for RGL a little bit ago, not currently, but maybe a few seasons ago, maybe around season 7, season 8. I forget essentially when, but he used to be. He also used to be the TFTV NA lead. My team was playing him on Metalworks. I think we won, or maybe actually no, I think we lost. Actually, we lost maybe 5-0 at the time. We weren't good, but we were trying our best. And I think I asked him in the game. I didn't even like add him as a friend and like DM him privately. I asked him in the game chat, like, "Hey, can I cast for TFTV?" And he's like, "Yeah, just send me like a demo of you casting and a demo of your writing skills." Because I also wanted to write articles for TFTV because that's when articles were still being heavily written
Yeah,
there.
Blake Farrick,
Um,
uh, a
yes,
lot of other people,
and
Alfredo Dan. No, maybe not Dan
Alfredo
at the
Dan,
time, but I know Blake Farrick at the
kind
time
of.
was doing it.
Yeah, and Alkier for is more for European stuff, but still additionally as well. Um, so I just kind of asked him, and he's like, "Yeah, just send me a demo of that." And then I sent it in a writing demo, which ended up being an article, which was about lucrative leaving King's Crew, I think, or no, joining King's Crew after playing demo in advance. And I got some stuff horribly wrong, and it was kind of embarrassing, but I didn't actually send in a demo for my casting. I think it was maybe later that night after the scrims on Metalworks. I was just up at 2 a.m. and he saw that I was up on my Steam account. I think he friended me, or maybe I
Mm-hmm.
friended him. And he asked me, "Hey, really random, but can you cast some Oz Fortress right now? This will be your demo." So I never sent in a demo. I just like my demo was casting Oz Fortress with him at like 3 a.m. that day, and it went well, and he got me on as a caster. That's basically it.
Okay, okay. So you were basically thrown straight into the wolf's den. You have your first cast doing All Fortress where you have no prior context of the teams, the players. I don't know if at the time there were any such things as like alias configs that we use. Like for those who do not know, we use casting essentials, and that's how you get your preset aliases and names for people, for the players on each team, and that's how you also get the team tags and the team names. Um, First casting experience. How did it go? And
Uh,
what do you, I would say whenever I do a production, I do a cast, I always have a sense of adrenaline coming while I cast. And then right after, I feel like my social battery has been drained. What is the first feeling of that first cast? And what were your impressions and takeaways from that first cast?
I guess the thing I was really worried about was I was just worried about talking too much. I was because I kind of wanted to like let Ire do not the majority of it. I guess the majority of it talking, and I wanted to make sure that I was like handing it off to him and transitioning things to allow him to speak extremely well because I was even though like I hadn't been playing competitive TF2 for that long, I'd been watching competitive TF2 for so long, like since basically 2015. So I kind of like that's why it was like maybe a bit easier for me because I had already watched so many videos of Gex and Marxist like casting games previously. And those are at that point in time, those were probably my two favorite
Those are the
casters and
benchmarks,
probably my
yeah.
favorite yeah, my favorite casting duo was Gex and Marxus. Gex is probably one of the best typecasters that TF2 has had up there with, people like Corn Pop and I'd say Godfather today. And then also Marxist is one of the best analytical casters, I think, is just so interesting and brought so much insight into the game. Like I'd always like really appreciate him hearing, how teams maybe should have played things differently. Anytime he advocated for a heavy, pushing into last was always really, really great to hear. It's kind of like a staple of him. He had those Marxisms. Not actual Marxisms, but
No,
Marxisms.
we don't talk about
Um,
communism here.
yeah. But little Marxisms that he would include in the cast. So that's kind of what I tried to base, kind of, or how I approach casting. And there was like a bit of adrenaline, and kind of like a bit of fear factor, just in terms of like what you say is live, which is kind of like an odd experience, especially when you're trying to make it somewhat professional. You're not just like talking, like, I don't know, with your friends, in like a pug, and someone just happens to be live streaming. It's like, no, you're trying to put on an event for an audience, and you're trying to make it hype. And I think the hardest thing that I eventually came across, I don't know if it was that match or if it was like the next few, was how do you try and make a match interesting when it's stalematy? And how do you try and make a match interesting when, like, you just know that the other team is going to win, like 5-0? Like, that's why it's so hard sometimes casting Freya, because, like, especially for so long, like the past few seasons when they got second and third, it was there was like a bit of like mystery about what's gonna happen, but like so many seasons you cast Froyotech, and this isn't like a complaint against them. It's just like, they're just so good that when they go into the server, they're gonna win. But still, how do you make it interesting? How do you make it exciting for people to watch? Is kind of like, I don't know, the main difficulty that I guess I came across.
Yep, reasonable answers there for sure. I think one of the biggest things that we miss a lot in TF2 production is because we have such a dominant team. You know, generally in other esports, you have a. I guess we could take for example from Valorant, Fnatic. It's really nice to have that dominant team because then you have two storylines you choose to root for. You want that team to continue their dominance, and then the other storyline is, hey, we want that team, to fall down. We want an up and comer, an underdog to come in, David versus Goliath type beat, and take down that Goliath, which is, in our case here, Froyotech. But the problem is the rare scenario where in that esports title, that team continues their reign for seasons and seasons on end. Now they have fallen, a few times since then, but that's only recently. So they had a pretty dominant reign for about seasons 1 to whatever season Witness Gaming came in and upset them that one Miracle Grand Final, and then G6 comes in 2 seasons ago and takes 2 Grand Finals. And really, one of the things that you take away from this is that like it's really hard as a caster, you know, outside of commentating the game is, how do we make this cast more interesting in terms of a storyline? Like what storylines can we push that may ignite passion or excitement from the viewers? Whereas when we went on Fireside, we cast some of the lower invite games. There is a storyline. Like for example, for Cat Girl Cafe, can they get out of the rut that is bottom invite? For Estrogen Took My Homie, will they stop losing games that they have such dominant leads early on, and can they get out and actually break past the gatekeeper level of invite? Cap Posse, same thing for that, because you have Yum Yum leaving Froyotech, and that team has always been middling around invite playouts for such a while, and now with Yum Yum back, having retained some of that Froyotech knowledge from Banny, can Cat Posse break that top 4 part of invite? But I do resonate with that. Like, how do you even build a storyline at that point? How do you excite the viewers when the outcome is pretty much decided from the start?
Yeah, it's kind of difficult because you kind of have to kind of play, like, you can't play so dumb, like oh, we don't know that Freyutag's good, or if it's like Freyutag going up against, like, for just example, this season Rome. Like, I don't think that match was casted, but if it was casted,
Definitely
it's
not.
kind of like you can't play dumb and be like, oh yeah, I think Rome's gonna take this 5-1. Like, it's Freyutag. They're gonna win, but you also have to kind of like add in that mystery of, like, what is maybe a victory for Rome. Like, I think, maybe getting 2 rounds off of Freyutag would be a pretty big victory, and in that sense, you could hype it up as like, oh, do they get 2 rounds? That would be incredibly huge just for them as like a team. Um, in that type of way, I think that's maybe how you have to try and angle it. But yeah, it's definitely kind of difficult doing that, and I think that's kind of something that TF2 has, and I think, that's kind of maybe the glory of this new, schedule is that you have closer games. Like, you had Covenant versus LeBron-Constantinople last night, and that
Oh,
went to
that was a
3
banger.
maps. Yeah,
Minus
that was a
minus the second
banger.
map. Minus the second map. We don't talk about that. Blame ball for that. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, and so I think that's definitely kind of the beauty of it is because you do have much closer games the entire time, which is definitely much better for a viewer's perspective, because there is maybe more of a genuine, I'm not sure who's gonna win, type of thing there versus like, oh, you're gonna have, the second seed team play the sixth seed team, and you know that the second seed team is just going to win every time. And then the one time that it doesn't happen is the time the match doesn't get casted. So that was always kind of like a thing because I think there was one time Ascent got upset because Rando played NG on product, and I don't even think that match got casted because everyone's like, "Why would we cast this match?" But of course, the one time you don't cast
Which
it
one was that again?
is it was the Ascent Rando team. He played NG on product, and they lost to I forget who it was. It was like a lucrative team or
King's Crew probably.
something like that. I'm not sure, but they lost when they realistically really shouldn't have. They kind of got upset. Not like Ascent got upset, but like it was just an upset victory for the other team. Um, so that's definitely kind of like one of the struggles there, one of the challenges. But yeah, I'd say, I guess talking about casters who I would always look towards, people like Gex and Marxist. You saw them last night, but Marmalou and Sandblast, anytime they were on the RGL, I think they're just amazing because they have such great insight in the game. And they also know the players as well. They kind of know how they like to play. That's also why I think Jarrett is such an amazing caster because he has the speed and he has the play-by-play, but he simultaneously has the analysis, which just makes him so like such a complete package. And I don't know, it's so amazing. Obviously, it's great to see him play. He's doing fantastic work with LeBron Constantinople, but I think on casting, he truly is a gem.
Truly is a gem. I would say even at that, maybe him and SGC would be considered. If we were to be on an actual television broadcast, those are the two you want on the broadcast together. But in the sense of casting, in terms of influences, we also have to talk about how casting TF2 is towards a casual viewer experience versus a experienced audience. Now, there's a hard balance to find with that, and whenever I think about like who can we put into the shoes there to, if we were to broadcast TF2 like how Overwatch League was done to a more casual audience, who was the best caster, to introduce them to the game while not being too overly analytical or too color, to get them excited for the game while also pandering to the experienced audience, like the tryhards of the game. And I can think of a few casters off the top of my head. When I pose that question, I would probably say like a Godfather, a Jamond, a
Yeah.
Tcmano, a Trad. Jared and SGC are pretty much granted. But
Yeah.
like, how do you even find that balance, to be able to be that exciting while also catering to many different backgrounds of viewers?
Yeah, I think the ideal way is you need to have someone play like the smart man and someone to play the hype man, and not in that the hype man is dumb and the smart man isn't hype, but just like a good example I think is if you look at Formula One, you've got Crofty and oh my god, I forget his name, but usually it's Crofty and someone else like Jensen Button or someone who's actually raced in Martin Brundle. You have Crofty who's just like this hype announcer, and you've got someone who used to play in or used to race in Formula One, and I guess I would extend to TF2. You have someone who's kind of like a hype man and someone who has actual invite experience. And I think the beauty there is you can have the hype man ask stupid questions that may even be obvious for anyone who's played TF2 before, but that way it kind of allows a smart man to answer the question, which might answer some questions that people who don't play competitive TF2 have. So, like, why aren't they pushing? Oh, they have Uber Disad. May not be obvious, but if your whole experience is just playing pubs, then you might not quite know that. And so, like, the hype man can give the smart man an opportunity to say that. What might be common knowledge for some and not for others, and also allows them to expand on that and kind of go into higher level tactics. Like, sure, they have Uber Disad, but what they could be doing is trying to pressure for the force, yada yada. And so you allow some deeper analytical insight while also answering the base question for kind of a clueless audience. And so I think that's the best way to kind of do it. Who you have fill those roles. I think you mentioned some really great names there. Godfather for sure, Space Ghost. And Jared is a really great example, but they're actually so unique as a casting duo because generally, personally for me, I don't like talking over my co-casters, but they're a duo that thrive just talking over each other and they make it work. It's something I could not do for the
That's
life
true.
of me, but they are so unique in that way. They make it more of a conversation and a cast at the same time, which I think is why they're so beloved.
And it makes sense too, because when you look at how they cast, Jarrett tends to be the more talkative type. Like he tends to say more words in his cue to speak. But when you have SGC supporting as a reactive kind of person and trying to provide that extra secondary input, it makes for a controlled chaos cast that is pretty good all in all. And I would actually, we're gonna timestamp this. This interview was recorded 7/14, July 14, 2023. A few of the things that you talk about, like like distinguishing and explaining certain scenarios in TFT, like Uber pushes, or like general scenarios and how you want to approach them. I think you were watching the game last night. For those who are watching this, yesterday, July 13th, 2023, we casted LeBron Stantonopoulos versus the Covenant with Marmalou and Sandblast. And one of the things that I took away from that map is you would notice at how Marmalou would add nuggets of information into the cast and explain certain scenarios, specifically in that granary map, which granted you have to do it because of the pace of a map like granary, but it's one of the things that distinguishes really good casters from newer casters is that ability to seamlessly add that information and make it work in a cast like that. I don't know if you noticed that, Tcmano, but Marmalou is like really solid at doing that, and he also complements off of Sandblast very well because Sandblast is kind of like that Jarrett minus the the analytical part of Jarrett's casting.
Yeah, and it's like you have to be analytical, I think, in a certain respect to cast because you have to know what's like important to cast and what questions you should ask in the first place. But yeah, I think Marmalou and Sandblast are a really great casting duo. I got to see them live at Fullerton, and that was actually just such a treat because I don't know, they're so good. They know the game so well, both of them, played on Freotech, not at the same time, but they've had really great invite careers just aside from Freotech. And they're just so knowledgeable about the game, and they're both able to get, super hype. But they know a lot of the players they're casting, so yeah, they can kind of put in those nuggets of information. And it's like also where like Sandblast or Marmo would just casually say, yeah, we were scrimming them just earlier
That's
and
something you
they were
don't
doing
normally get from a
XYZ.
professional broadcast too. Like
Yeah.
you don't have people who have like firsthand experience from playing against them because most of those professional broadcasters they're like watching the game from like an analytical VOD review perspective, but you have somebody that actually has played against these players recently and provide you, like what their genuine thoughts are because they have the best knowledge from having played with or against them.
That's why I really do enjoy Marmalou and Sandblast. Another caster who is actually really really talented, and a shame he doesn't do it more often, is Banny. The few times I got to see him cast, I got to cast with him at Fullerton and see him cast on his own channel. It's like the same thing. Like he can get hype when he wants to, and also he's just got that wealth of like just TF2 experience. So it just TF2 experience, I think, is one of the big things, maybe kind of obvious, but also kind of like underrated things when it comes to casting. I think at a certain level, even if you don't have it yourself, just having to have a solid grasp of the game flow and just kind of knowing what to look out for, what typically happens when, and when those things don't happen, when to make a note of it, and why it is maybe uncommon that it isn't happening. So I don't know, is TF2 and just sports casting and video game casting as well. I think it's just such an interesting thing, which is good because I do it. So it'd be bad if I didn't think it was interesting, and I just just clocked in the hours just because. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
definitely, definitely. I think one of, as a personal opinion, really one of the biggest things that holds back TF2 casting from being a production, very like very professional for what we have production, is that a lot of casters, a lot of producers, they don't really do the prep work prior to a cast, so they won't research the teams. But if we held ourselves to higher standards, similar to what me and underscore do, no 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 narcissism included in that statement. Like, if we put in a little more prep work, we could definitely blow away people with our casts. And kind of sucks when we watch, when I look back at our VODs, and I, or like when I'm looking at the viewer counts of what streams are live, because I'm monitoring a bunch of different stuff on production. Is like, I'm monitoring how our casters are casting to the audience, how the audience is receiving it, and looking to see if any other people are watching it with their stream. And it sucks when you turn into the watch party and they're not commentating on how the casters are casting. I actually was watching bot mode stream when he was when you casted with Mustard Overlord, the Cat Posse versus LeBron Constantinople game. And the only caster feedback I heard from the chat or from the stream was like, "Who's that guy that sounds like Jarrett?" And Botmo was like, "Yeah, it's Tcmano." And I'm like, "No, no, he even got the
TK.
name
I'll
wrong."
take that. I'll take that. I'll take
But it
that.
sucks because
I just
I really like to hear the feedback. I like to hear other people relishing in our cast, and it sucks when you see the watch parties. But I mean, I can see why they would want to do it. I just wish the viewers watching that person's watch party would hear our casters.
Yeah, I don't really mind watch parties, just because it's like some people, they just prefer a different way of viewing the game, themselves. So I'm not necessarily too opposed to it. I just hope they don't say anything negative about my cast, like, oh my god, this guy doesn't know what he's saying. So I'm not too against it whatsoever because a lot of those people like bot mode. It's kind of like the same thing with Marvel and Sandblast. They kind of like have that type of insight and like that knowledge of just who the teams are and what they do. And, some people just prefer to watch the game, for themselves. Without any other input and kind of make their own minds up. And especially, I think when you're at that invite level, like a lot of those watch party people are, you have the ability to do that for one reason or another. But yeah, it's definitely something. But I think personally, I'm fine with it. Maybe different for you because you guys put in so much time and effort making these streams happen, and it is kind of such a thankless job, especially for you guys because you guys just you got all the teams coordinated. Try and get the server info, which teams can sometimes be a bit stingy with. But it's a really phenomenal work that you guys do specifically. So I do understand in that respect. But me personally, I don't mind a good watch party. I enjoy
That's true.
my
That's
own
true.
watch parties, especially when it's my friend's game, and half the time we're not looking at the match, we're just calling great, but we're just saying he's missing some shots. That's all we're saying. But
He
great
almost
great
graped
guy.
them.
Yeah,
You
great
know, it's
great
it's
guy.
okay. It's okay. Like, it's not something I take personally because in the end, a watch party actually brings more exposure towards our stream. It's just, I like to hear people talk about how good our casters are because I hold our casters in high regard. A lot of them are voluntary. They take their time, you know, to do this stuff without being paid, and the output of quality that people like you and Mustard put in is something that I really appreciate because it makes me realize, hey, these casters realize how much effort we're putting in and they're matching it close. So, okay, wait, hold up. I have We can go back to casting a bit later. We can talk about production a little bit later. We're going to talk about your playing career. And I actually have a
Oh no.
special guest who would like to interview you about your career. So let's start off. We are introducing a new interviewee who knows the lore of Tcmano's playing career. Omarmxbee, welcome to the stream. Let's talk, Omar, about Tcmano's first RGL team. This is back in 2020. So this does line up. Tcmano is not hiding any cracks in his story. We're gonna talk about his playing career, which started somewhere around the pandemic with the newcomer team Rap. Omar, could you give us a little bit of lore?
Oh, you want me to get the lore? Okay. I thought I was gonna ask questions here.
Yeah, ask some questions. Ask some questions.
All right, Tcmano, from the very beginning, we gotta start off with the not even minus rep, the newcomer cup season. I forgot the name of the team, but I believe that's when we first met, right?
That is indeed when we first met. My first TF2 team was one of the newcomer drive teams. It was called Grand Caster.
Oh,
Um,
I know this one. I
yeah,
know
it was
this.
made. It was made by someone called Deku or Barbados, kind of friends in the BBL sphere of things. And yeah, I think it was just auto-generated. I was on that team with him as well as a someone called Lechuga, and together we lost every single game possible, so definitely not a good squad of players. Also on that team was someone called Snoozy June, who is pretty deep into Highlander, so if you follow that or you playing that, you might know of Snoozy June, aka Noctis, I believe. um, so yeah, we went there. We lost every single game possible out of 5, and then from that, I was like, all right, I'm gonna make my own team. I'm gonna get the own players, and I asked Lechuga. First things first, I was like, hey, do you want to be on this team with me together? And he's like, yeah, sure, dude, sure. Am I gonna play soldier? And I'm like, yeah, you and me, soldier. And then somehow, seconds after I've created the Discord, Jay, someone sneaks in, and it's Omarmxbee.
Oh
And he
my
says, "Hey guys,
goodness.
I'm on Soldier now," and Lechuga got relegated to Scout. So GG's, GG's.
We have to talk about us. There was the troublesome threesome that comes into the team. Maybe a little bit later on. We can talk about him later. It's not Lechuga. It is great, but first season of newcomer. You guys go 6-2 in the regular season, as people can see on screen. And actually, those two also were pretty close. Actually, decided by 1 round. But you made it through playoffs, made it to the grand finals. Oh, lo and behold, there's a team that stops you in your tracks and puts you at the pitiful silver medal. Maybe Omar has some questions about that season for you, but
No,
Oh.
he
any
doesn't.
reflections about
He
it?
doesn't. He does not.
I have lovely questions about our very first time together.
Yeah, you don't,
Yeah.
bro. You don't, bro.
From the very beginning, I think you forgot to mention one important character. Tao was on your team, our really old medic. He was a lovely character.
That's true.
Uh, but throughout the season, we had a lot of fun. I think we were like all friends, just like playing on the same team. I kind of like just again, like he said, snuck myself in there, and kind of like made myself the appointed soldier who would play shotgun at that time. But I think we were just all friends playing in a team. We weren't like that serious. I mean, we scrammed like almost every day. I think like six
Yes,
times
we
out of the
did.
week.
Even on the weekends we scrimmed.
But you gotta like take into account to the time period it was quarantine. So I mean, like, where else would we be if we're being honest? But it was a
True.
really fun season up until round 4 playoffs against RGL on Nice. I believe Sunshine and I don't even know the last map, but if I remember correctly, I think it was our fault that we kind of lost those 2 maps because we both really like
Yeah.
played our worst match of like our lifetime, and I think it is kind of our fault we lost. We kind of threw our games, but at the end of the day, we all had fun. We were all friends back in the day.
You say that
Uh,
like we're not friends now.
I mean, some of us aren't on the team anymore. MTR, Ender the Frog, like aren't as active anymore. But
NTR. I know
yeah,
I know what that means in Asian terms. Did they mean the same thing there?
no, it's like
NTR?
Marco
Natarar?
something. No, it's a
Okay.
different thing. But we had a lovely end to the season. I think we ended the season off by, if I remember correctly, like we all got in like a face call, right? Like We all got together. We like
Yes, I think
FaceTime.
so. Yeah,
A
we did. That
FaceTime.
Yeah,
yeah,
because
that was our celebration.
a celebration for like our first team together. We made it to playoffs, newcomer, and I mean, what else was there to be but proud? We lost the playoffs, but it's always next season in amateur. What might I say? What was like your favorite memory from our newcomer season, Tcmano?
See, I don't know if this was newcomer. I think it was. We had a scout called Bofa. Not just the meme. That was just his name. His name was Bofa Swag. And he lived like up in like Yukon Territory, Canada. Like he lived like so far out in the sticks. And the problem is that we'd start scrims and he'd either just be asleep and he'd sleep through like all the scrims and then he'd show up for the match and then he'd like drop like 40 kills or something. He was just that type of guy. But the problem was he lived so far up out in Canada and kind of like Yukon Territory is that there was a time where he said, "Yo, I can't make scrims today," and we're like, "Oh, why?" He's like, "Well, I'm 2 hours away from my house," and we're like, "Okay, no problem. You're making scrims tomorrow," and he's like, "No," and we're like, "Why aren't you making scrims tomorrow?" It's because he has to drive 2 hours out to get groceries because that's where the nearest town is from his house. It was like 2 hours away. And the road got snowed over and he couldn't get back to his house. He just had to stay in this little town for like maybe 5 days or something like that. So we just couldn't have him for that whole entire time. I forget who we got during that period, but yeah, he was just away and snowed out, and he just like sent like pictures of just like all the roads covered in snow, and he's like, "Well, there's nothing I can do." So I think that might be one of my favorite memories, just because I was like, "How do you live
Hmm.
like that?"
Well, Omar, before you ask a question, we have to talk about, like this is both of your guys' first season of like legitimate competitive TF2. And that most of those team activities that Omar just described, those aren't typical for a TF2 team, but I guess maybe with circle jerks nowadays, friend groups contaminating the scene or, I mean, being contagious around the scene. Those are kind of things that you would do as like team bonding activities. Tcmano, how did it feel to like this is your first season, you're leading a team, you make grand finals. I mean, yeah, you guys were hard grinding throughout the season. Like, what? This is your real first serious foray into competitive TF2. What is that newcomer experience like, and is it something that you've been able to replicate? Given the circumstances that it was COVID, it was a bit special, but with like the continuous scrimming. But I'm really curious to see what your takeaways were from this first season.
My takeaways was that the game was easy. We were the best. Everyone else was the worst, and I held that mentality going into amateur, and it did not hold up. We did make playoffs, but every successive season we've just done worse and worse and worse. So, definitely newcomer, at least as a team, was our peak. We did pick up Grape though in amateur, and that's kind of why we did as well as we did that season, because Grape, love him. He's an amazing scout. Honestly, could go main or probably beyond if he really, really wanted to and put in the time and effort.
Yeah, we,
Just
we,
he's
we
just
don't we
got
don't talk about the team. We don't. Grape did play in main, TC Mano. We don't want to talk about that team that he did, that Omar and him joined though. We can continue on though.
Oh, yeah, we'll not talk about
We
that
can do
one,
that.
I
We can do
guess.
that on a reflections. We can do that in a reflections podcast with Grape at some point. But yeah, let's go on if you had anything else to say.
Oh no, it's just I don't know. I guess I kind of realized that at this point in time, definitely COVID kind of helped playing TF2 and making it easier and kind of more conducive, just because like Omar said, it was basically the only thing you could do was just stay inside and play video games. And especially you could do it without feeling guilty, because that was like what everyone was saying you should be doing. So it's like, well, I'm just helping out the world right now by scrimming, every single day of the week. But now it's kind of like it's a bit harder to justify, which is kind of like why I do like casting a bit more, because even though you do have kind of sometimes these big blocks of time where if it's a best of 3 or a best of 5, it can go all night, but that's still maybe 3 days out of the week. Whereas, scrimming every single day, maybe all 5 days, is a lot more intensive and also just a lot more taxing mentally. But yeah, I guess it taught me that TF2 is a great community where you can make some great friends, like the aforementioned Omar. And yeah, I don't know. It was just a really great time in my TF2 experience. her
Yeah.
career.
Omar, any other thoughts on that before we move on?
I think my last comments is that although we were friends, we were also like very serious about like our newcomer season. Like it was our first
Yes.
time, probably we like I said, we scrim like every week. We demo reviewed before the scrims and a little bit of secret lore. Like I like prime sub to Banny and asked for a demo review of our team, and he said yeah. And I got a demo review from Banny from our team at one point.
You know,
Yeah, it's true.
But
He complimented Omar's Pocket Soldier. Said
yeah,
Omar played like he did on Pocket Soldier, and I mean,
holy.
Danny played previously this season on Pocket Soldier, so I mean, you can make the comparisons right now. You know, Omar Tech Bound
I
incoming.
mean, you never seen me and Banny in the same room, so I don't know. Just take that
That's
with a grain
true.
of salt.
I saw you guys have the same call though. What was that, man?
All right, let's move on. Let's move on. Let's move
Well,
on.
let's move on. So, new challenger enters the foray. On the screen we have TC. Oh, actually, before we move on, big question that I have. Maybe Omar can support this, but Tcmano, did you find yourself as a leader facing a lot of pressure? Like, if you guys lost a match, I mean, maybe even that may have been more amplified by losing that grand finals back in your newcomer season. Would you ever like mope around and stay awake after a very close match that you lost and just think about like, oh, we should have done this, we should have done that, like what was your thought process as a leader? Maybe you weren't the IGL or the main caller, but I'm sure that you may have had a lot of sleepless nights reflecting on losses.
Uh Yes, I think so. It's so long ago. It's been so long since I've led a team that it's kind of hard to remember, but I think so. I don't think it was necessarily sleepless, but there's always a period after you lose where you just kind of like sit in. We would definitely be the team that we wouldn't leave instantly. Just like we would sit and kind of semi discuss like what went wrong and kind of like be sad in that respect. Um, type of thing. And it's also just because even though I guess I was team leader, I was playing roamer. So I really didn't have that much. I wasn't super confident in knowing what was happening in the game during all times. So I kind of just let Omar and specifically our demo MTR kind of lead the team and definitely the pushes in that respect in terms of in game. My team leading mostly extended to getting us scrims and maybe trying to organize times for demo reviews, kind of that type of stuff, kind of like the out of game stuff in terms of team leading. But definitely, I think when it came to in game, like how are we going to push, how are we going to do that type of stuff, it was MTR and Omar because they were probably two of the more vocal people on the team. And then when we got Grape especially was definitely more of the in-game team leader, whereas I was mostly just getting scrims and kind of organizing times for us to do demos and finding ringers and all that stuff. So kind of like the boring part of leading a team, whereas I'd say Omar was definitely more of like the in-game IGL.
Omar, can you say that is trustworthy information he is saying to us on the stream?
Oh yeah, I was kind of like again like I kind of stuck myself in the team and I like put like the players together like not like the main core but like whatever we needed. So I was kind of like I think I was like really passionate about the game. So like I like was the most vocal on the team. I think definitely like newcomer season when we lost the grand final, I took like a big toll because obviously I did bad. I was like I let my team down this whole season. Like I was good and then all of a sudden I just decided to be bad this one game. And but I mean, hey, we always have next season. So I mean, there was always that, and I always loved playing with these people. So it never like stayed to stuck to me for too long.
You know, we can go transition into next season and we can talk about that man that we have been talking about oh so much. Season 5 Amateur. This is a season that had actually a lot of controversy as far as I'm concerned.
Mm.
I think this is the season where it was actually recently brought up in the GGL Team Fortress TV drama that for those who are watching back on this in a very distant time, there's current controversy regarding cheaters and this team, which is named after a Rwandan genocide, I believe. We're just gonna call them TN. We're gonna call them TN. They make grand finals. They get banned and disqualified because they had 3 cheaters on the team. This is the season that brings in Grape. ignoring all the controversy around Season 5 Amateur, what does Grape bring to the team? And I also see Ender the Frog. We can talk about him later. Why did you guys pick up Grape, if you remember?
That was mostly Omar. Well, basically, in the preseason of Newcomer, we had been scrimming this team called Hot Ramen, and kind of the star player on that team was someone named Sharky, and someone named Grape. And Sharky wasn't playing at that point in time, or kind of like playing a little bit, but Grape was just like this monster fragger. Especially at that time, he was playing Soldier, but just on any class. And at that point in time, we were also hosting Omar Pugs, which was kind of like pugs for lower level players, newcomer, amateur, maybe a few IM players as well. Basically a point where, we just all get together and play, because at that time, the only other options were Platy Pugs, which is where the legendary Gambino played. So not many other options if you were kind of like a lower level player wanted to get into the game. So that's where we hosted it. We had great play in there a few times. We just saw how good he was. We kind of knew he was good. And Omar was like, we have to pick him up for next season because Bof is not playing with us anymore. And Lechuga doesn't want to play Pocket Scout. So Omar pulled out the works. He pulled out the Riz. He Riz Grape up to high hell. Grape was not intent on playing the next season. And Omar convinced him, like, he pulled out all the stops. Actually, it's probably the most, like, Omar actually has ultimate charisma. Like, I cannot understate this enough. You might
I have a
not
hard
think
time
it, but this
believing that.
man is charisma incarnate when he really wants it. He managed to get like free electronics so many times, actually, and free pizza. This man, he can't keep getting away with it, but he does. It's actually just like an incredible talent of his. I'm not quite sure how he does it. But through his charisma, Grape joined our team, and Grape is just like, he's just an expert scout. And just kind of team player as well. He's just got such a fantastic mental. You know what I mean? Like, he's very rarely the type of person, even when he does get angry, like he generally doesn't get angry at the team. And he's very good at taking criticism as well. Like the few times that I think we've ever had to give him criticism, he's really good at taking it. Like, fantastic mental, really great comms as well. He communicates well in game, which is a big thing. Many players don't use their mic. I'm very liable to it as well, and definitely in pugs. I can be a bit mute. But that's not the case for Grape. So yeah, it was just a case of fantastic comms. He was willing to be the pocket scout and kind of do the IGLing for us as well. And he seemed like he was like just a really chill, fun guy to play with. That was also just a fantastic DMer. So it was kind of like the full package for us.
Yeah, so comes in from you guys meet him in a pug. Omar serenades him with maybe some Enrique Iglesias song, whatever the hell. He comes in with 2 seasons of experience, Go Raw, organic granola bars, and hot ramen from season 3 and season 4 amateur. You guys, so basically this guy just comes in and takes the reins off from Lechuga, and Lechuga's allowed to be activated on a role that Lechuga is more comfortable with. This team, now under new leadership, seems to have good synergy, because if you guys look on stream, this is the season 5 rep with the newly reinforced roster featuring Grape. They go 6-2 in the regular season again, but I actually do not know what happens after round 3, because I believe a few of the playoff matches here were wiped due to the controversy of the 2 grand finalists from this season having cheated. So after all is said and done, Rep it places 4th here. How was the season overall for you guys? Actually, I'm gonna let Omar shoot the questions. Omar, take it away.
The questions, or you want the lore? Because I can talk about both right now.
We can do a bit of question there about the lore, but we should do some questions before we get into the lore.
All right, some questions for you. I have Tcmano. For you, Tcmano is let's talk about what's it called? Meeting like the expectations. What did you think about going into amateur season? Did you really think we were gonna make it as far as we did in newcomer with addition of Grape, or did you think like this might be our season, we might win? Like, what was your expectations for us? I wanted to know.
I think we could have won amateur. I think the main thing stopping us at that point was maybe not scrimming as much as we did. We were still scrimming a fair amount, but definitely not much as we were in newcomer. And also, I think we just chose our maps poorly. We chose clear cut, which we weren't good at. and that kind of bit us in the behind. But the big thing was in playoffs, the team that we lost to was Broken Keyboards, who at that time
Feels
were
like a
also
Yari
playing
team.
amateur.
It's like a Yari
Yes,
team.
there were some kind of known people on it. Brandon 411 Gex was also on that team. I think maybe Caban was on that team at that time. I think he was.
Oh, it's a Brandon
Who
411 team. Okay.
Yes, and Caban as well, who went on to go play in advance, I think like the season afterwards. So he was a really great player. But the thing that really kind of ruffled our jimmies was that they rang the cheater for their match against us. I think even if they didn't ring him, we probably still would have lost. But we were pretty heated about that because the day of the match against them, he actually got a VAC ban. It was for CS:GO, so that's kind of why RGL didn't enforce it at the time. It wasn't for TF2, so they just kind of let it go, and we kind of played the match like a bunch of fools, and we ended up losing. But yeah, I think aside from that, it was we kind of met our expectations. I don't know if I thought we would win, but I wanted to make playoffs, and we did, so I was kind of happy.
So what actually does happen there? What happens in round 3? Where's the history there? Did it get wiped? Or did you guys lose to the cheaters?
We lost to cheaters.
Yeah. Well, we lost to the cheater who was ringing on broken keyboards. And then I don't know what happens after that. The two cheater teams played each other. The team who will not be named, and then also Pugas and Paris or whatever they were.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think was the Thomas team and the Warm and Powerful. Not quite sure. They played each other. Turns out they both have cheaters on both their teams. So I'm not quite sure how RGL decided to end up doing that. I guess we got 4th, and I don't think we would have placed 4th normally. But I'm happy with this revisionist history coming out, so I'm not gonna complain.
I mean, that season is probably an example of I guess maybe the anti-cheat team maybe not being able to salvage on time because with the recent controversy that we have as of this date, July 14, 2023, there is a bit of controversy regarding the anti-cheat handlings of a certain player in a certain division for a certain team, and that has led into a kerfuffle of controversy that has now exploded into a ever-flowing avalanche. This is probably one of the good times where the AC team, despite their understaffing, and props to them, they did find the cheaters here, which you can see here in the league standings here on screen. Puckus and Paris and TN. They banned them. History has been revised. Rep ends up 4th. Overall, though, like you said, you were salty after the loss to Broken Keyboards because you lost to a ringer who had a VAC ban. Wasn't for TF2 though. Do you think the tides could have changed had that chance meeting with that guy not happened for the match?
Oh yeah.
You think so?
You take a look at the stats. If you ever, I don't think you're gonna pop the logs, but you take a look at the stats.
Take a look at the stats. I think I did awful.
While Tcmano was doing awful, I think if you look at the stats, the rest of the team in Gully Wash, despite the cheater, was actually quite pounding.
Oh, I think Gully Wash we were doing fine. Clear Cut, we just.
I think Clear Cut we
lost
lost it completely, but you gotta take into account this guy was dropping 500, 400 DPM. There's definitely a chance for us to beat Broken Keyboards, and even greater chance for us to beat Snow in April, which we have beat before in the season earlier.
Snow?
Yeah.
Snow is in Freelance Frogs?
Snow in April?
Oh, Snow in April. Oh, you're talking about the player.
The number 1 team.
Yeah.
That's the name of the number 1 team in the season. We've beat them multiple times throughout pregame. Obviously, it's pregame, so you never know in the official match.
Right.
But I think there's definitely chances that we make it past definitely 4th, maybe into 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. Yeah. But it definitely ruffled my feathers when we lost.
Yeah.
But see, that happened on April 15th. Let's see if we can find those logs, shall we?
No.
It is
it's
pulling open something you just do not want to see. Just don't want to see it.
I didn't do it.
We can pull up the Clear Cut logs because everybody was.
Oh no, those are even worse. Pull up the Gully Wash if you're gonna pull up anything.
let's do
Jeez.
that. And I can already see who this ringer was because this guy drops 46 frags on Tcmano's legacy game, and Tcmano did not have a legacy game. He had a Rome AD 476 years after Christ game. Rome fell that day, and I think the
You
scout
dropped
murdered
like
him.
six.
You know,
Yo, listen.
Wait, I never knew it was this bad with Tcmano. You sold us.
What do you mean? There was nothing to buy, bro. There was nothing to buy. I had no purchasing power. No purchasing power.
but wait,
Yeah.
but wait. You know, we could go
There's
shed
more.
some light on Mister Mono, but we should talk about the first map, which was Gully Wash, which was sold by the other soldier on the
Wait.
team.
Oh.
Wait, Omar. Omar.
So I don't know if you have much legs to stand on here, Mister Omar, but maybe
Omar, what are you doing, bro? What are you doing?
you'll have to
I was on
send
heavy. I was on heavy
Tcmano-
half the game. Look.
but that's Tcmano who's playing heavy. That's the thing.
Oh yeah, he got all the damage on heavy. That's what I meant to say.
You sold, bro.
Let's not talk about who sells. Let's just talk about the player that was selling us the most. The ringer.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. W.A. Aki. He was going huge. But regardless,
But
I
that
mean, I don't
Aki
know if we would
played
have.
after that season. We could probably look at the history, but
Yeah.
I don't think he played after that because I haven't heard of him from recent. His last match was actually 2021 April, and it was literally that match you guys lost.
He got
Yes.
banned, if I remember correctly, after that.
Yeah, he got banned. I actually even don't know if they banned him, but they were like so close to banning him that I think he might have just left. Because he didn't finish out the season with his own team that he was actually playing on. But I don't know. It's so long ago that I can't be like too salty about it because that's like seasons and seasons ago. It's all the Broken Keyboards guys. They're chill. Actually played on their team in IM a couple of times, and that team kind of morphed into the Brown Moment team, which I'm subbing on currently. So it's all chill, to be honest, because I don't know. They try and do everything they can to win. Might as well ring the best player that you possibly can, who just happened to turn out to be a cheater. So it's not their fault he was cheating.
So we could actually
Um,
probably transition this into a question before we move on with about your playing career.
Yeah,
Now
that-
we could actually we could segment this into the GGL drama, but we're not we're not
Oh,
gonna
the
we're gonna
GGL
try to
drama.
enforce that because we're taught. So for those who are just reaching this point in the podcast of this episode, Tcmano, Rep, Omarmxbee, while both of them sold on each of the individual maps, they lose 2-0 in the round in the quarterfinals, or I believe the round of 16 versus Broken Keyboards. The Brandon 4-1-1 led team with a cheater on that team. And the cheater here, as you can see from Discipline history, they were banned soon after the season ends. So it's kind of funny that they were banned after the season ends, but history isn't revised also to, discredit the Broken Keyboard second placing. But never mind that. We're going to talk about the cheating enforcement. Tcmano, what are your thoughts on cheating enforcement? And maybe if you want to go spread a little powdered sugar onto the GGL drama, you could talk about that.
Well, I don't envy the task that the current admins have found themselves with. Uh, it's interesting. I think cheating. I definitely think that maybe a year ban is maybe a bit too lenient. If you're found out cheating just because it appears that the AC team is understaffed. I can't really say I have experience with them, and what they do, how they do it. So, I think maybe giving them more incentive to do those things. Where okay, it's not just going to be a year before this guy that they spent however many hours investigating is released back into the public. It's actually kind of more of like a final decision. Maybe would incentivize them to do a bit more because I think that is when you only have like a few people and you know the guy that you're gonna investigate all this time into, even if it turns out that they are cheating, it's just gonna come back anyways in a year. Maybe it does make you a bit more not as pressed to do things because it's kind of like, what's the point? But I mean, I don't know. I'm not on their team. I could see cheating being a bit more than just a year, maybe 2 years or 3 years, because even though it's kind of to imagine, oh, is there going to even be competitive TF2 in 3 years? People have been saying that for years on end, for at least probably a decade, and still somehow in some way there is competitive TF2 at the end of the day. So I think you can make it even up to 3 years, and I think it'd be fine as a punishment. I think there is a case for people coming back and kind of learning from their mistakes. Obviously, everyone talks about Habib, and that's kind of like the prime example case. But I don't think Habib ever cheated in a competitive setting. It's just that he cheated in pubs, which is a completely different thing, I think, at the end of the day. And I think when you cheat a competitive setting, that kind of indicates that you are not a trustworthy person and you don't have any competitive integrity. And I think those type of players cheat not just to have fun, like maybe someone would in a pub, which I don't agree with anyways, but there's a difference from cheating in a pub and cheating to troll versus cheating to win. And I think people who do that, especially for the latter reasons, definitely should not be given such an easy into the community, especially when they're allowed to just kind of talk with players, try and kind of brainwash them, or kind of gaslight them into thinking that they did nothing wrong. I can't really say if Elijah's cheating again. I'm not going to pretend like I know enough about cheats to say that he is or isn't, but I don't think he should have been unbanned in the first place. So,
Well, we could probably talk a little bit about, other esports policies in regards to that cheater scenario. So Valve, when a player is VAC banned for CS:GO, after their VAC ban is 5 years or older, they are eligible to participate in majors. Outside of that, third-party TOs, it is up to their discretion on how they want to enforce cheating policies. ESL, CS:GO policy for VAC bans or for cheating, I believe it's 2 years since the VAC ban issue date. So that was done back in 2017, and that's actually the same as RGL's rules. I believe cheating bans for a first offense are 2 years before expiration, and then after that, I think a second offense is just a permanent ban. I can't be quoted on that though. I didn't do too much of my research. So they follow ESLs, but the difference between ESL and RGL's ban policy is that ESL relies on a pretty somewhat trustworthy anti-cheat, which is the VAC ban for the VAC anti-cheat for Valve that works seemingly well in CS:GO, but not too much for TF2. So, in the end, do you think that in taking into consideration how understaffed and how skeleton the AC team is, because all of the AC team from RGL, from what I know, this is the inside scoop, they also prioritize different stuff. For example, AAD, he's also a website developer for that, and that's, I think right now the website development is his primary priority. And then obviously you have Samus, who has spoken out on TFTV about their experience and how really being an AC volunteer while the requirements to be one is really hard and rigorous. Once you go through that trial period, a lot of them end up dropping out in the end. Like, do you think that, considering the gravity of the offense and how hard it is for RGL's internal policy on how to review, it kind of really does align with what you're saying, like they should just be permanently banned now?
yeah, just because it is so difficult for people to do.
Because TF2 VAC doesn't really work as well as CS:GO's VAC system. So
No, unfortunately not. And I don't know, that's maybe just one of the cases of being in the funded, well, not underfunded, but you know what I mean. Valve kind of putting TF2 on the back burner. But I mean that's always been the case, and I think that it kind of goes into the hands of the community to really do a lot of these things. And I think one of those things should be just kind of like ensuring that cheaters don't have an opportunity to come back nearly as easily. And I think, it's kind of a thing where sure, you should give people the benefit of a doubt. I 100% agree, but once you've already kind of had that first offense, I think suspicion should be on you a bit harder than it would be if you had never cheated in the first place, especially in a competitive setting. But it's one of those things where I can kind of see both sides of the equation. I'm not going to pretend like I know everything on this topic, but it is just something to ponder about, considering it is kind of like the current talking point of the TF2 scene, with everyone on the forums commenting on it. So it is extremely topical for the time being.
It kind of points, the whole issue and how it's imploded so far kind of exemplifies the discourse between a well-oiled league that knows how to approach such scenarios like ETF2L versus RGL, and you can see that there's cracks in the foundation about how they internally handle these things. And really, just looking at it from what we know from the outside point of view, it's really easy to draw conclusions, but and generally say like, oh, RGL is dying, this is over for North America. But what most people don't really take away is that when you look at the bigger picture, like a league is going to have these issues. You are going to have rogue people who go out of line, and we're also taking into consideration that the new owner has only joined just as of recent. So really, you know, there's been a lot of dysfunction within RGL because you have Taylor who had to step down due to health reasons, but while speaking more on the issue and not trying to go too much into it, it kind of seemed that Taylor had gone AWOL towards the end of his tenure in RGL and may have had that due to what I can only assume is just burnout from trying to fix so many of the issues that had plagued the internal workings of RGL at the time. Where was I going with this? They bring in Arcadia, who's the new owner of RGL, and he comes up with that forum post, and he's like, blah blah, I'm gonna do this. We need to put this in system, and then you can see that there's a loss in communication, or like there's no discussion at all from this post, and the admins who were commenting on the thread do not corroborate with with Arcadia's approach to how he responds to the public accusations. And really it just puts into perspective about how dysfunctional RGL is at the time. But really, to go back on my point about RGL potentially dying from this, no, it's not really going to be that. Everyone's going to be hot-headed at the start of things when such an issue arises. But once things cool down and people take the time to ease their mind and then have a well-rounded discussion on the topic, you got to consider that RGL has been around and definitely better than ESEA days of adminning and how they handle the service and whatnot. So RGL is a huge step up. It's not perfect. I can't really speak too much and give my own opinion on it because I'm very neutral on the topic. I just really produce, and much like you, Tcmano, you just play and you cast. But I think maybe you could feel the same way about how I'm approaching or like answering this whole new debacle about the cheating situation with Elijah. But I also know that what I was saying, I was kind of just going in circles and circles again.
Yeah, but I mean the whole RGL thing, I'm not an admin, I don't specifically know what their protocols are, if they're following them to a T or not. I'm not gonna say that they've been doing poorly. It might just be that they've been following their protocols, and maybe their protocols need to be revised after this. Maybe it's a case of their protocols only work in some scenarios, and maybe it doesn't work in this one, or maybe it could be that the AC team has been investigating Elijah. They've just been kind of taking a bit more time than they thought, and also it's one of those cases where like at the end of the day, this is just like a bunch of volunteers doing this for it. It is a paid league, which is kind of like the thing that everyone says, but even with that being the case,
There is powers to the players in some kind of way.
yeah, power to the players, but also it's not like I doubt that any of the admins get paid to admin in that respect, and I heavily doubt that any of the AC team gets paid. So
Yeah,
from
we
their
could
perspective,
actually
it's still a volunteer job.
so I'm not going to say my source there on that, but obviously the AC team is not paid, but there is a rigorous process in how they determine who can volunteer on the AC team, and that's why it's so skeleton. Admins are not paid because really the whole juxtaposition behind that, or the rationale, not juxtaposition, is that like it really is a juxtaposition between money and volunteerism, and how much money can jade an admin's decision making. So for those who don't know, the AC team is not paid. The admin team is not paid. They're all voluntary. So they work a very thankless job. And you can see that is why it led to the whole outburst on the forums. And the frustrations were being vented by RGLs of which will not be named. And I think the only people that get paid from what I know is Dolphin and and the casters. I think some of them, maybe you could interject in that, Tcmano, or maybe Jarrett or Godfather when they look back on this. I don't think you get paid, but I know Dolphin gets gets the Twitch revenue. From what
I honestly don't know. Like I'm not really that deep in the inner workings of RGL, so I'm not gonna speculate too much because I don't have much information to speculate on.
Yeah.
I don't want to just cause needless rumors for the sake of them on that type of stuff. But I guess speaking about being paid for casting, the only time I did get paid for casting
I think that was with
was
us.
actually yes, and also going out. I think Banny he gave me like a couple of bucks for helping out at Fullerton, so very huge props to him. Resub.gg, they did fantastic work out there. And so that was an unexpected surprise. So big props to him for trying to support the TF2 scene in that respect. But yeah, I guess we can move over to casting.
Well, actually, no,
Again.
no, 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 no,
Okay,
no,
okay.
no, 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 no. We have to talk about the last chapter. Shrek 3. It did have a movie after that, but this was the end of the rep days. I think, is Omar still here with us? He probably is.
Wait,
Right?
when am I getting paid?
Oh.
When do you get paid? You only do our Valorant broadcast. That's the thing, bro.
Dang it.
You'll get paid soon. Don't worry. With Fireside having the Patreon and the merch, I can only promise good things from there. Moving forward. So let's hope that can be a thing. But let's talk about the last season of Rep, shall we?
Sure.
The last season of Rep, season 6 I am.
Oh yeah, I forgot. The other season's off task season. Never mind.
Yeah, that was last season of Rep. That season, that's the season we forget. Personally, we had if you look at the schedule, there were so many games that we lost by one round. I think maybe 4 of them, 5 of them, and that's because that season our roster was in shambles. Not in terms of that we had bad players or anything. It's just that it was very unstable. Sorry, it's the correct word. And yeah, we were just kind of swapping out people every time. There was a game I played Medic on. There was a game we had Mario Mans play demo on. So it was just kind of all over the place. We didn't make playoffs, and it was kind of sad in that respect. But still, it was a fun season, the last proper season that I kind of played with those guys. But it's been fun playing TF2. But I think at this point, I've kind of realized I'm better off, just standing behind a mic and talking into it.
Yeah, the season Rep goes 7-9. A lot of close matches. You even lose to your rivals and broken keyboards. And then Xylophone even is in here. So Xylophone, led by Queequeg. But I don't think this was the season that Queequeg played Engineer. So that was the season they played it in Amateur. So that's not the same season that I'm thinking of. You even lost to Volume Balcony, the Hexarray and Cop McCopper team, who actually had Wild Rumpus in it. There were a lot of close losses there. Do you think roster changes could have affected anything here Like, do you think
Yeah,
if you had maintained a stable roster, it would have been all good moving forward?
I think if we had a stable roster, we definitely could have made playoffs. I think if we had Grape the whole time and Lechuga the whole time, we definitely
Lechuga.
we definitely would have been exceptionally a lot better off than we were. But that's just how things go. You can't harp on it too much because it's just what it is. That's just kind of sometimes how teams go. People have to do other things. Other things come up, and rosters can be shaken up. You can't really ask people to be extremely committed because at the end of the day, this is just like a fun thing that a lot of people do. It's not like this is a Valorant, professional Valorant or professional Apex. Where you're making like maybe 300,000 if you win the whole thing. Shout outs to the ALGS going on right now, where that's the current prize pool for first place. Kind of
Definitely understand
exciting to
that.
see. And so yeah, but yeah, it is something that I think we could have done better in. But at the end of the day, that's kind of like also when things were starting to open up a bit more as well. It wasn't just like complete COVID. There were like more opportunities to go outside. So I don't blame those people for kind of getting out of the house and stop just staring at their monitor all day.
That is true.
So
That is true. Well, we can close the chapter on Tcmano's legacy because after that, after his playing career, I don't think you really play seriously for any other teams. You do join forces with a few teams like Off Task, Broken Keyboards, and Brown Moment, but you never really fully commit to playing an entire season after that. So Omar, thank you for coming. That will
Thank
conclude
you.
the portion of Tcmano's career. Do you have any last thoughts before we shove you on out of here?
Yeah, my final thoughts. I love playing with Tcmano. I love Tcmano, but I will have to say that you guys suck at Romer Tcmano. I'm not gonna.
I mean, it's true. He speaks true facts. I'm not even gonna try and fight it. I'm not saying I'm the best roamer, so
That's
that's
true.
that's why I'm hard stuck. I am, but that's okay. I'm just happy to cast some games and try and see some fun TF2 action happen.
So I know I got time limited on you. So let's try to get these more important questions in towards the end. So you kind of move on from from uh from playing to casting. Well, you technically were casting and playing at the same time, but this is since then you've joined RGL. You've been on our side, which is Fireside. What would you say if you are willing to spill the tea? What differences have you noticed between the casting orgs that you've been in between TFTV, between North America and RGL? I mean, wait, TFTV. Wait, why did I say North America? TFTV, RGL, and Fireside.
TFTV. Well, TFTV NA at least doesn't do much of anything anymore. Just because there's really no one there to take the reins. Micro Cheese was doing it for a while, but he took a break, and I, I
Yeah.
I know he's still active in the scene. I see him over here on Fireside a bunch, but there's not much going over on TFTV for the moment. Um, it used to be Console who was doing that, but or they stepped down.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, there was just really no one who took over kind of after Ire left, to be honest. Mitch was doing it for a bit, but then Mitch
We don't, we
got
don't we don't talk about that. We don't talk about that.
well, yeah. Well, Mitch was doing it, but he went back to Oz Fortress. Always good.
Oh.
I remember he had one amazing production thing where he used like a Joy-Con controller.
He did it for the
Uh,
Land Down Under if you were watching it.
Yes, yeah. He also used to do it on TFTV, and he has like some amazing like angle shots because it was actually really cool to see on the broadcast back. But yeah, TFTV just doesn't do much casting anymore. As you know, RGL is basically all Dolphin. That man is a machine. I remember at Fullerton
Easily the
Land, he was
goat.
just yeah, he was just back there the whole entire time. Even though that wasn't an RGL production, he was doing it. He was helping out for I guess Resub.gg at that point. And I mean, Fullerton, it was so hot. He was sweating back there, but he was just back there, surrounded by all these monitors for like however long, like 12 hours a day, just putting in the production work. And, it was just him. There's no one else really there. I mean, other people like you guys and TFTV EU helped out and casted some of the games that weren't being casted live. So again, huge props to you guys. But as far as for all on-site coverage, it was just him just putting in the hours. So it was a really amazing to see. And then Fireside, it's you, it's Doctor Underscore. Sometimes it's Antlers as well. It's you guys are just always amazing. All the production guys are amazing. I can't really say I have a favorite. That would be unfair. Because all of you guys put in so much work, and it is such a thankless job that you guys do. And I see you guys talking in here. And just earlier today, you guys were talking about production stuff, trying to get multi-streaming up and working, being able to stream to 2 platforms at once, and the effort you guys put in to a kind of update the HUDs and make clean graphics for all the viewers to enjoy is just absolutely phenomenal. So it's really great work.
So yeah, we can't make this podcast suddenly turn into a hype up or dap up all the casting orgs. But it really is it is really, I think one of the hugest pain points that people don't realize when we do a production is that things can go wrong, and when things go wrong, that is the worst scenario case for everybody included, because last night we had the issue with the TF2 update, but everything lies within the production guy, because a TF2 cast is 1 producer and two casters. So the producer does both the observing, the production, the pre-cast setup, the match coordination with the teams, everything, all that. So I really like it, honestly, when a lot of people watch our streams, because then it kind of amounts to the work that I've done putting into the stuff. But it also makes me excited because usually when we see a lot of viewers too, and I don't think of them seeing as like, oh, they want to come in to watch a Fireside production. They want to watch not only the game, but also who is commentating it. So it's really nice when you cast a match Tcmano and then people are like, oh my gosh, it's Tcmano. He's so good. He's so good. Like, I've also talked about it with you internally. I think you're one of the best play-by-play casters alongside Godfather. Well, maybe not. I actually say you're better than Godfather. Sorry, Godfather, if you're watching it back. But like, you're on that kind of level where it's like, if we need somebody to, represent TF2 in terms of casting of what we have active right now, you'd probably be one of them. And it's really exciting to see the viewers come in and they're like, oh, Tcmano's casting today? This is going to be a goated cast. Because when I promote some of our matches and they see who's casting, they're like, yeah, I want to see you cast Tcmano. So it's really nice to see not only is the production getting love, but also the casters. Because you guys are kind of like the first line of publicity when it comes to a cast, per se.
Thank you. That is too kind. I can't say I'm better than any of my co-casters because they're actually just all phenomenal. Godfather, he's just fantastic. The way he hypes up people and the way he gets chat interaction going is actually just so phenomenal as well.
Sure.
It just all the amazing invite casters, other people like you said, Trad, Mustard Overlord. I guess he'd be an invite caster, but I've been able to cast with him a few times as well.
He casted in
He was,
TV, yeah.
yeah, he was actually one of the first casters I remember watching all the way back on X Television. Actually, I mean, that man, everyone knows he's been in the scene for like years, maybe a decade. Actually, no, definitely a decade at this point. It'll be interesting if we'll be able to say he's been in the scene for decades because, I mean, come 2028, he probably will have been so. And I mean, that's only like 5 years away. So, it's pretty awesome to see. But we are gonna be wrapping this up because
Yeah.
5.
We got 5 minutes left. Okay, so we'll probably have to hit some other questions that I think is important. What is the biggest thing that you find the biggest controversy that you think plagues the community as of recent, aside from the cheater stuff? Like, from your perspective, what holds us back from being a legitimate sport, whether it's production, the game, the players, the community, or if you were to ask me, I would always just say player retention and how much coverage we give to the newbies. But obviously, as you can see, that has been solved by TFT Coaching Central. So
Yeah, it's it's kind of what people have said for years, like how do you get casual players in to play competitive? And I think that's definitely part of it. But I think it's also just promoting competitive TF2 to other competitive players. I think is the bigger thing because I think there are people who will play games and they'll just enjoy casual, for what it is, and they will just play casual in all types of games. There are people who will just naturally prefer to play video games, multiplayer games that way. And then there are people who will prefer to play games competitively. And I think while, yes, converting the TF2 casual base into competitive is very important, I think also advertising TF2 competitive to other competitive players in different games is equally important, because those are the people who are just naturally going to have that type of drive and that type of who find fun naturally in competitive situations, versus maybe getting someone who already enjoys the game to enjoy it competitively, where the barrier might just be the fact that it's competitive and not the game. So I think that's definitely something to try. Is sure, getting the TFT casual base is important, but I think also advertising to other competitive communities like Overwatch or Valorant, or kind of more of the boomer shooter areas, is also something, because if someone's competitively minded in one game, it's highly likely that they'd be willing to try out and be competitive in a different game, especially if some things apply, which things will always will if it's just an FPS, where at the end of the day, being able to shoot people well is always going to be an important skill to have. So I think that's one thing. It's definitely just, having more people interested in competitive TF2. And I think if you have more people interested in competitive TF2, then that's kind of just a cascading effect, whether it's just you have more leagues, more divisions, more kind of people willing to put in the time and effort to help kind of cover these things. I think it all comes down to the player base, because, without the players, there's no game to cast. And without that, there's no real kind of competitive TF2 scene. So I think it all comes down to players and trying to make TF2 a bit more well known and make that jump over a bit easier for everyone.
Okay, we're running on time, so I'm gonna try to hit this one last hard question. Is this to follow up on that? Would you say this is a true statement, or it has some nuances behind it? A lot of the issues that are faced by the TF2 scene also culminate from the fact that a lot of people like to complain but don't necessarily offer a solution or try to work towards one when they are presented with a problem. Because
Yeah.
really, with the land situation, they had, I mean, the only person that was willing to step up and do lands was, I guess, what you say, Resub GG, which is headed by Banny. So he
Yeah,
fills in
I
the gap
mean,
where the land issue is like, there's an issue, we have no lands. Well, everybody's tried to set up a land before, but nobody actually really did it up until Banny. And using Banny's personal brand power, yeah, the guy has a lot of controversy in terms of his ego and whatnot, but he's probably the only one that actually took the time to spearhead an initiative to fund a land. But it seems like when there's other issues in the community, nobody really steps up to try to help it.
yeah, I mean, the land one is tricky, because sure, there wasn't land for a while, but a lot of that was because of COVID. I mean, you think about the year before COVID, 2019. I think there was a land. I don't think it was a big land. I think it was, what is it, RGB? No, I think that happened. And I guess the big thing is we haven't had a big international land over in NA for a while. But I think the counterpoint to that is, the only two times we had that were Rewind 1 and Rewind 2. It's not like North America actually has a big history of having these big international lands. It's really only those two. Every other land has just been kind of domestic, where it's kind of like other teams going. And we've had that fairly consistently for RGB. They've been able to kind of put that on, whether RGL has done something, or Resub has done something, or hasn't done something, and a lot of credit has to go to the Fragile for doing that consistently and kind of being able to set that up. Um, I believe so. And yeah, like you said, big props to Banny as well for doing Resup. And I think, what was it, last year, was able to help do a total of 3 lands. There was the Fullerton one, there was the one in Philly, and then there was also the eventual RGL one as well. And that was just kind of like this plethora, cornucopia of lands that year, after that whole kind of drought we had, which I think was mostly due to COVID. I think we would have had some type of land over like that 3-year period if COVID wasn't a factor. But in terms of just like people complaining and not willing to do things, I mean, yes and no, but like the thing is, like, there's so much volunteer work that happens already in the TF2 community that I can't say that people don't do things. Like you do so much and it's volunteer work, and people might have probably complained previously like, "Oh, newcomer and amateur don't get casted. This sucks." And then up comes you and Antlers and Dr. Underscore, and you guys cast a bunch of lower level matches. So sure, maybe the people who complain aren't the people putting in the work that could be, but there are people who step up and put in the work, so I don't think that's necessarily the problem. I don't think the lack of volunteers isn't the problem in TF2,
More
because
the advertising
there's
then is what you're saying.
yeah, I think it's the advertising, because at the end of the day, it is volunteer work, and that's kind of like the problem. It's like we're so lucky to have been fortunate to have so many amazing and great volunteers. Whether it's people who do admin work, whether it's people who kind of, even if it's people who like coach newbie teams, stuff like that. All of that's volunteer work. Maybe they get paid a key. Like, wow, big bucks. You got 249 in your bank account now. Not even then, because market.tf isn't going to give you like a perfect one-to-one trade on that. So it is just kind of volunteer work, and I don't think you can really
It's
say
not
that people
sustainable,
aren't
no.
trying to work. Yeah, it's not sustainable, and that's like the big thing. It's never going to be sustainable for any individual person, because at the end of the day, there's no money in it. Aside from maybe like a couple people, it's only just passion of the game. And while passion of the game is super important and it's a really big thing, um, it's something that at the end of the day you can't rely on from one specific person for the whole lifetime of TF2. And it's so interesting because TF2 is such a long game. I mean, like, you look at Valorant, that hasn't even come to half as long as TF2's been around. CS:GO has had multiple iterations. It's not like it's been the same game the whole entire time. Even things like Dota haven't been around for as long as TF2. Smash Bros gets new iterations every like 5 or so years. So TF2 is very unique in that it's the same game. It's been the same game since its inception. Sure, we've had different like weapons come in, but it's basically the same game it's been since 2007. And it'd be kind of unrealistic, even with money, to expect people to stay for that whole entire time. So I think it's just a bit hard, especially in such a tight scene. Um, but no, I don't think that necessarily people complaining is a problem, because it's kind of like
That's a
what
good
people
point.
were saying. You got to complain to know that there's an issue in the first place, and maybe people could complain in a more effective manner. Whether that's like complaining and sending actual demo ticks to the AC team, for example, making a bit more relevant. But I don't think complaining is necessarily a problem. Because there's just so many people who have already shown that they're able to go above and beyond, and maybe we shouldn't rely on those people to go above and beyond, but I think that's the only thing we can rely on at the moment. So it's kind of the dynamic that we found ourselves in. It's not a sustainable one, but we've been able to sustain it for what, like 11 or 12 years. So I mean, we're not going to be here till the end of time, but we'll be here for a while. So I'm not too worried.
Yeah, before we wrap things up, to add to that point, the ROI for a sponsor coming into TF2 is very slim, at least specifically for the competitive scene, just simply because of the fact that compared to like 2012 onwards, where maybe EU ETF2L match back then, like maybe like 2009, 2010 would have 1,000 viewers, and even then they would have like broadcasting orgs competing and broadcasting the same match. Words of Blackout John, by the way, from Essentials. Uh, there isn't a lot of unique viewers, that come and watch a Twitch stream. So when we send our analytics over to potential sponsors, like for example, we had talked to a few in the TF2 scene that have sponsored events in the past. We usually get a low ball return in how much money they want to sponsor our streams and coverage, simply because usually a lot of those viewers that tune into our streams are not new ones, but they're recurring ones, usually at the higher level. And then our viewer levels actually go down because of the fact that when we broadcast, it's usually when everybody else is playing a match. So really, the only reason a lot of money doesn't come to the scene is that when you sponsor somebody, related to TF2. You want to sponsor a name like a Banny. You don't want to sponsor a tournament because it's very unlikely that you will see a return on investment. And really, it's really just the goodwill of the sponsor that leads to them sponsoring a TF2 tournament. So there's a reason why there's not a lot of money in the game, and it's not really a profitable venture for a lot of sponsors or people or sponsors not even related to TF2 outside of Marketplace TF and Manco Store or whatever, STN Trading if they actually sponsor things, to come in and sponsor a TF2 event, which makes it really hard. Well, with that being said, you know, we end on a somber note, but we can do our shout outs. Mr. Tcmano, do you have any shout outs
Yeah.
before we close things up, or maybe
Sure.
final thoughts?
I'll do shout outs because I do have to go super quick. Obviously, shout outs to you, Jay, for doing this whole thing, always trying to innovate Fireside and just kind of push it forward. I've said a lot of shout outs to you over the course of the stream, but that's because it's true and you do so much work. And it's honestly fantastic
Always
to see. Shout outs to
appreciated.
all the producers, Dolphin, Doctor Underscore, Looster. I always forget how to say your name, man. I'm so sorry. Antlers as well, Micro Cheese. Shout outs to all the players who play in any of the matches I've casted. Like I've said before, without them playing and allowing us to cast, there would be no match to cast. So it really is the players at the end of the day who kind of provide the content for us to kind of just talk over, which makes it awesome. Shout outs to the Pug Refugee Pug server. You know who you guys are. Always fantastic to play with you guys in Pugs. Shout outs to my team, Brum Moment at the moment, and also the Minus Rem alum Omar Pugs happening this Monday. You heard it here first. That's the word on the street. You didn't hear it from me actually. And aside from that, thank you so much for having me on this Retrospection podcast. Hopefully, I haven't waffled too much about
No, I waffled up too
meaningless.
much, so.
Nah, you're cool, man. You're cool, man. You got great insight. Hopefully, I haven't waffled too much about too much drama from too long ago. That at the end of the day, I think we've all moved past, and I just hope all of you guys have a great day and are going to be able to enjoy this upcoming weekend. So, see y'all then. And at least for me, that's a goodbye.
Yes, sir.